A couple of weeks ago, the Langhans family, my two brothers, my parents, we were on a vacation trip around the Grand Coulee Dam area. How many of you have been to Grand Coulee Dam before? It's a pretty amazing, lots of us. It's an amazing thing. We've been there before, but some of us hadn't, so we decided to go and check it out, especially on the day it was going to be 105, so we thought, let's go in the afternoon. We have 10 kids, 11 years and under between all of us, so let's get them in the AC, get them kind of, take a little safety break. And so with all those people, we have 18 people in the family, we had to take multiple vehicles. The tour for the dam leaves every hour on the hour. It's first come, first serve. You show up, it's about 50 minutes. So we're like, sweet, let's make the 2 o'clock tour. That'll work. We'll get the tour in, then we can come back, have some dinner. And so we left for the tour, and a couple vehicles, and we showed up at the tour, and it's first come, first serve, about 40 people. And I tell the guy, hey, we got a large group, somewhere on the way. He's like, oh yeah, we're good, you're gonna make it. And literally, as the last vehicle pulled in, there was another vehicle that pulled in, and they're walking like this, and then it's literally first come, first serve. And so a couple of us adults, and then 9 of the 10 children made it on time. There was a vehicle that didn't quite make it on time, and I will leave the guilty nameless on that one. But there we are. It's 105 in the parking lot, and like, okay, well, we'll allow the other group to go, and we'll just wait. We'll go at the 3 o'clock tour. You show up about 35 minutes, no big deal. Well, there was a contamination in the dam, and so they canceled the 3 o'clock. So we're like, all right, no worries. We're on vacation. Nowhere to go. We'll hang out at the visitor center. Check that out. That'd be cool. They canceled the 4 o'clock tour, and we're like, well, we're committed now. Like, I don't know if it's smart or not smart. We got, hangry kids, but we're going to go for the 5 o'clock tour. So we show up at the 5 o'clock tour, and it's you've been there. It's an amazing thing, and what they did during the 30s and the 40s to build the dam, and it's just phenomenal. And part of the tour now is you get to go across the dam, and they let you out and you get to look, and that's been closed because of 9/11 restricted. And so we go there and we show up, and they're telling us as we're rolling up, like, hey, with the kids, make sure they don't climb the railing, because the dam is over 500 feet tall. It's basically the height of the Space Needle. And so, don't let your kids climb the railing, which felt about this tall. They're like, oh yeah, you kind of like, oh right. And so we get out, and we're all rushed to the railing. You look over and like, whoo, this is big and tall. And then I'm looking around, and my kids are here, great, kids safe, great. And I look back, and my wife is all the way against the bus, like all the way back here, just like, yeah, because she does not do heights at all. And she just got fear and panic on her face, and I'm like, babe, we've been hanging out in Grand Coulee in 105-degree weather. Like, you're looking over this railing. Come on. So I go over here, grab her hand. She squeezes the life out of me, and then we walk over. And then she got to the railing to enjoy it. And here's Amy on our trip enjoying the view from the top of the dam. And this is not one of those staged social media posts. Like, this is literally, she just was like, get on there and just hanging on for dear life. But to her credit and everybody else's credit, like, she got up there. She's fearful and all, not certain about the dam, is it going to hold in the water and the railings and struggling. Like, she got up there and she looked over, because what I'm going to talk about today, and we're going to discover today, trust is in the doing. Trust is in the doing. And you can take notes on the back of your bulletin, or we've got a Marywood Chapel app that's free. You can download, and you can follow along on some message notes there, make your own comments or whatever. But trust is actually in the doing. You could sit here today in the air condition and say, oh, I trust that railing. How many of you trust that railing? Like, it would hold you, right? Like, all of us. But the trust actually comes in the doing, like leaning up against the railing and looking over. And the same with our relationship with God and following God and pursuing God. Wherever you're at in that journey, could be your first time to church or first time in a really long time. You're not even certain there's a God or what to think of him. But it's not just about believing, not just about agreeing with some thoughts in our heads, but actually living out this full life that God has for each and every one of us. That he knows you. He's your creator. He knows your story. And he's got wonderful things for you. And it comes through living this life of trust and actually doing things and following him. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to line up one by one, and then line over here, and we're just going to do trust falls. You know those things where you just stand backwards like this, and then yeah, absolutely not, right? You're like, I'm not sure who I trust around here to catch me, like who would, like, how many of you have done a trust fall before? Like Cam a long time ago, or like some corporate event, you're like, I got to get out of here. Like something happened. But like these trust falls, because here's when I say trust is in the doing, I think our brains go to this. We have 2 options. We have 100% trust, or we have 0 trust. Like somehow in our brains, and we relegate this to a lot of decisions in life, and a lot of things, we think there's only two options. We have this dichotomy of like, there's only two options. It's A or B, it's one or two. And when we talk about trust is in the doing, sometimes we're going to think like, well, I didn't do that thing, so therefore I don't trust, or I'm not sure I could do the thing, or we just think there's only two options. But I think we live life in the 1 to 99%. That most of our life is lived this way. That it's not a 0 or 100. And I do hope for me and for you, I do hope we have some of those 100, it feels like 100, where you just like, I don't know if, but I'm just like, I'm feeling like 100% trust on this, in this moment or this day or this decision. That way I feel like, like as best as I can, this is a 100% trust decision. I feel like I hope we have some of those moments, hope you have some of those times, but I think most of our life is lived in this 1 to 99%. Like Billy Graham's famous last words that were recorded, he graduated this year and went to be in heaven. One of his last recordings as he was getting old was just that you and I would just trust in Jesus. We would put our belief and we would follow Jesus. And here's the deal. I think most of us live here this way because you may not even feel like you have 100% trust in what maybe God's doing or doing around you, but you got some level of trust because the proof is you're here today. Like, you're sitting here going, God maybe got something. Maybe he's real. Maybe he could talk to me. Maybe he can improve something. Like, there's some sort of proof you're here today. Because let me just encourage us today. Ready? Follow Jesus with partial trust. Just some level of trust. Some of you are going, that's not even real spiritual sounding. I don't even know if that's in the Bible. Like follow Jesus with partial trust. Like, that doesn't sound right. Like, follow Jesus. Trust is in the doing. The doing is the following. Like, follow Jesus with some partial trust. Because we get a little, like, just as a society, right? We get a little too caught up in the percentages and the rankings, don't we? The 10 worst, the 10 best, the 100 most, the 50 most, like, we get the what's the worst. Like, I love the Sports Center, not top 10s. Like, those are great. Like, we just rank everything. We get a little too crazy with that. And somehow somewhere we think there's this level of trust scale that God's measuring us on or we're measuring ourselves on. But living out this life with some little bit of partial trust. Because here's what living life following Jesus looks like with a little bit of partial trust. You ready? This is the picture of it. It's like, I was like, babe, smile. Pretend like you're actually enjoying this moment. Like, she's hanging on for dear life. And like, this is what I feel like following Jesus is a lot of for me. It's like, I trust, but I don't know yet. Maybe I am, but I'm not. And following Jesus. And here's the honest truth with it. My wife, she's super courageous. She did that. She's bungee jumped before. I'm not even sure why she did that. She just hates heights. But here's the deal. When we got done and she was like, whew, that was great. She loved looking, but she was real nervous. I was like, to confess, I was a little bit nervous too. She's like, what? You didn't say anything. I was like, somebody had to keep it together for the kids so we could all feel good. I had to be the strong one. And you're taking pictures. You ever have those moments like you take pictures on leaning over and I like took one over the dam? You ever have with your phone, you just think you're going to like lose all sense of grip and then just like chuck your phone in those moments? It's one of those like, I'm for sure going to drop my phone. I was thinking about how to get a new phone already. It was crazy. But trust is in the doing. Like, will the foundation that I'm standing on hold me in life? Well, trust comes as we move forward. And you've done this. You've done this. Have you ever been to an amusement park before? Silverwood, Disneyland? You've been to an amusement park? Particularly Silverwood. We went this summer. You get in, you get locked in, and this is crazy roller coaster. It's going to spin. It's going to go upside down or whatever, and it's going to shoot you out 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you get thing, and you get locked down. They come by and make sure you're locked in. And then you're just like panicked, and you look over the attendant. You're like, I'm trusting this attendant to make sure the ride runs fine. And then you realize it's a junior hire, and you're like, what? Can I get out? Like, I'm out. Like, I just trusted my life to a junior hire. I mean, I know they're older, but they all look like they're in grade school to me. I mean, it's just junior hire. You've trusted before, too, and you weren't sure. You had some sort of partial trust. You signed up for college. You're like, I don't even know if I should get a degree or if there will be a job afterwards. I mean, you still went for it. You're trying to do some work, and you're like, I don't even feel qualified for what I'm doing right now. But there's some sort of level of partial trust. You're moving forward because trust comes in the doing. And we're going to look at an encounter here I think will help us solidify that. Jesus is okay with some partial trust. Jesus is okay with a little bit of partial trust in our following of him and doing what he's asked us to do. Luke chapter 5 is where we're headed. If you want to turn in your Bible, you got your phone, whatever it is for you. And we're going to look at this encounter that Jesus has early on as he's getting public with what he's doing. and he's beginning to recruit some of his early followers. Here we go. One day as Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, great crowds pressed in on him and listened to the word of God. Everywhere he went, Jesus had followers. People that were just curious, they were looking on, they were skeptical, and he would just attract great crowds. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people showed up. So he's standing on the shore, and he noticed 2 empty boats at the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. So here these guys, these fishermen, they're at work. Washing the nets is like the end part of their job to make sure they're prepped and ready to go for the next time. So they're just, like they're right at the end of their shift. And they're standing on the shore and they're just trying to wrap it up, right? And all of a sudden Jesus shows up with hundreds of people, kind of disrupting what they had going on. And so it goes on here. So Jesus stepping into one of the boats, he asked Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. People were so close, he just like made his own natural amplifier, with the water and this scene so people could see him. He could make eye contact with people. And when he had finished speaking, he was teaching this great crowd. He said to Simon, now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Like, hey, thanks for letting me use your boat. Here's my rental charge, let me pay. Let's square up here. And Simon said this, Master, it's another word for teacher. Out of respect, he goes, Master, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. Like reluctantly, he's going, hey, I know you're new around here. Let me tell you how this works. We've been working all shift and nothing happened. So like the idea, but it's not going to work. Like maybe you've had a sales job before, or you're in sales now. Picture yourself in a sales job. You've made calls all day, like cold calls. You're sending email, nobody's responding. Or you go around and you're checking in on your accounts and nobody's got time, or they're out of the office and no new accounts and they can't talk to you. And you're just all day long. Or you're in retail. You ever been in retail before and it's just dead? And you're just like, I could leave and nobody would even know. It's just like dead. You've been in retail and you're just like, can we close half day because there's nobody here, nothing's happening? That's what he's trying to communicate to him. It's not working. But, he goes on, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. But if you say so. Jesus, we're in retail and it's been dead all day, but you want to stay open another hour? Why would we go another hour? Nobody showed up all day. Nobody's going to buy anything. This is a waste of our time. But because of the authority of God in his life, that he's going to do something. He literally, physically is going to put some nets down. Because of the authority and the trust, even though it's reluctant trust, even though Simon is coming from a place okay, Jesus, but I know you're pretty sharp, but let me tell you something you don't know. There's no fish in the lake today, right? And it's not just enough to just go, I agree with you, Jesus. There's fish out there to be caught. Yep, I agree by word only or by belief in our head. But if you say so, I'll do something. So he let the nets down again. And this time, their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. God's provision in this moment was so great that his capacity to hold it was starting to give way. Trust comes in the doing. What do you need God to do for you, and how are you trusting him in that? Trust comes with taking nervous steps, living on that nervous edge of I don't know, but I'm going to, and I'm not sure, and I feel like I'm at 2% on this, but I'm going to trust anyways. God's provision. These guys are fishermen. They're at work. They had no sales that day. They're not feeding their family. They're not being able to take care of themselves. There's no way they're saving for retirement, their 401k. They didn't have it going on that day. But yet trust comes in the doing, so much so that it begins to break their capacity to hold it. That's how the God of the universe, your creator who knows you and loves you, shows up and provides for you. These guys are fishermen. They're at their job at this point, right? We like to fast forward in the story, but they're not there yet. So much so that God provided for him, so much so, I love this part. Then he shout for his buddies. He's like, hey, we got fish. And they're like, wait, what? They're washing nets on the shore. What, fish? Where? No fish. And there's not fish. But soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. Too much so. You've ever had moments in your life, you're like, God, good, we're good, too much. God, you've blessed us too much, we're good, heartful joy, just too much. That's where they're at. And I love it that they're in a situation where they got a problem. They got too much fish in their nets. It begins breaking, and they call out for their friend. You know, that's just how God works. I love it. I love it. This is how God works. God works in this way. I cry out to God so many times, and you know what he does to provide for my problem? He sends me a friend. Like, he sends me somebody with encouraging word. He sends me somebody that is going to come alongside and help me out. Like, that's just how God has built us for community and with each other. And that's how he works. And I love how it just shows up in this way. So the boats are almost sinking. This moments happen. And then just try to put yourself in that position where you're just like end of the day and all of a sudden there's line out the door or just sails come out, just like unbelievable. So Peter has this same kind of reaction. He just realized the moment and he goes, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." Like, he just falls down in awe of God, right? And he's just realizing how much greater God is in his provision in my life than who I am, in such a healthy and respectful way. We went to the dam. We loved it. It was a great dam time. It was a wonderful dam tour. I mean, it's just so many great dam jokes about the whole thing. It's hard not to throw in bad jokes there on that. But we went to the wonderful thing. It was amazing, like 35, 40 million man hours to build the dam in the 30s and 40s mostly, and in the 60s. And it's just unbelievable what God, people could do and get together. And then we drive away from that, and if you've ever been out that way, and there's just all these coulees and through like Great Falls and Coulee City, and just this beautiful landscape. And I'm like, it took millions of man hours, decades of work to build that incredible dam. And then God spoke, and all of a sudden all of this showed up, like in a single day. And it's one of those moments, like Peter's having, where you just become awestruck by God. They were just awestruck. This is what it says in the next verse here. They were just awestruck. Like, we're driving away, I'm just going, yeah, but look what God did. And it was just amazing. And that's really what the church is just a community of people getting together and being awestruck about who God is in their lives and then loving the people around them well. And here they are with each other. Everybody together had this amazing experiences God provided at their workplace for them, for themselves, for their community, for their family. And they're just in awe of God. And that's really just, man, if you could take something away today, that you would just become more trusting in the doing, just becoming more in awe of what God is doing and how he's working in your life. And even though you feel like at times it's maybe little or big, whatever the case may be. And then Jesus responds to Simon's like, "Hey, I'm not worthy" moment. He says, "Don't be afraid." Like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, Simon. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. Like, don't be afraid of your inability and capability to carry out what I have for you. Like, be okay with being available. Like, so we get so caught up with being, not able, like not qualified, not having this capability. God's really looking for our availability. He's like, don't worry, soon you'll be fishing for people. And as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. They trusted in the doing. They actually left everything and began to walk with Jesus in a different way. Like, here's Jesus' invitation to all of us to trust in the doing, to come and follow him and what he has for us. That we shouldn't be afraid, and it's all around people. See that highlighted word over there? He leveraged where they were at. They know fishing. They're fishermen. But he said it's not about fish anymore. It's about people. Jesus' community, his church, the thing he's trying to do in our world is with people, for people. What Jesus is trying to do in you is with people and for people. With the people around you, people who aren't here yet, and people that live in our community, and people around the world. What God is trying to do is with us and for everybody else. And that takes a level up of trust as you encounter this, as you encounter and be in awe of what Jesus can do in our lives. Because a lot of times, I don't know if you're like me, a lot of times it's a little bit easier to be okay with my vertical relationship with God when it comes to trust. Again, you're maybe at a different spot that I am, but just like, okay, God, you're my creator. I put my faith in you. I'm trusting you. And, I'm just going to trust that you know more than I do, and that you have all the resources in the world. So whatever you need to provide, and, you can give me wisdom, and you can do miraculous things, and you can change my heart in a split second, and you can it's a little bit easier. But then when it comes to trust in the doing, we talk about horizontal relationships, the people around us, I'm like, time out. I've been let down by people. I've had expectations go unmet. I've been hurt. I've had people intentionally like try to destroy things in my life and try to come against me and slander me and have malice and like, I don't even know why that evil exists. And then like, I'd rather just stay on the top of the board here, the vertical, like you and me, God. But Peter was called into relationship with God and for others, right? With the people around him. Literally, the other fishermen were in on this, and they were for the people. It would be like this, right? As we say, I don't know, God, I'm with you, but I'm not with the people around me. Because, again, how many of you have been hurt? Just genuinely, sincerely, we're not going to share any stories here today, but you've been hurt by somebody in life. Like, you've just been disappointed, let down, you've been hurt. All right, if somebody doesn't have their hand up near you, it's because they're not listening or something. I don't know, like, give them a wake them up moment here, like, we've all been hurt. We've all been in this, like, I don't really want to trust in the doing. So you're saying following, Jesus says, come follow me. It's about people. Like, that's going to have to mean I have to be with people and for people. I don't really like people, like, I just would rather go with God. Jesus didn't call Peter and the guys around and say, okay, just you and me. It's just you and me. That's it. Don't worry about anybody else. He's like, from the get-go, it's about other people. It would be like if we're a basketball team. Anybody, you getting on basketball? Getting ready? Gonzaga preseason? Here we go. All right, anybody on the basketball train? Okay, not quite yet. All right. Yes, I see your hand. All right. I'll give you a couple more months. All right. Anyways, just imagine we're a basketball team, and then we end the game, and we're like, man, we shot 48. We made 48% of our baskets, which is failing, right? It's below 50%. We missed 52% of our baskets. We suck at shooting, right? I mean, if you're failing, right, you suck. So as a basketball team, here's a new thing. We're going to go no more shooting from here on out. All the rest of the games, we're just not going to shoot because we failed at shooting, and so we're just going to quit shooting as a team. Like, how great of a team would that be? You know what I mean? Like, killer defense, I guess. But, like, unbelievably, they would lose every game if you never shot the basketball. Same here. It's like, I don't know, I've trusted Jesus, but then getting around people, I've just been hurt too many times, so I'm never going to trust in community again. Like, that's not God's plan for us. And I know it's messy and it's crazy and it doesn't work out perfect, but here's what God is trying to do in us and through us. You ready? With people and for people. This is the picture that God desires for us. And this is what it means to be part of Jesus' community. Here's the trust list. Trust in the doing. Forgive, accept, care, encourage, submit, restore, carry. You can't just simply agree, like you got to do. Like, you actually have to forgive people. And our pushback on this is like, man, this looks beautiful and I'd love to be part of it where I screw up and then people forgive me and I'm different than them and I have a different viewpoint and I don't know, but they still accept me. Or like, I've got something major going on and people come along and carry our burdens. Or I'm just down today and someone comes along and puts in courage, like they instill courage in me. That's the encourage part. Or they just, like, we have a mutual submission one to another, men and women and everybody just involved. Like, this is a beautiful thing, isn't it? But then we go, yeah, but there was that time where the person, I couldn't forgive them because it was just thing, and they didn't forgive me, and I feel like they should have, and it's just there's this thing, so I'm just no more. Just got to not forgive anymore. Right? Or just like, I've tried to carry people's burdens, and it was just too much and too heavy, and it crushed me, and it cost me financially, and it just was not right, so I'm just not going to do that anymore. I'm just not going to trust God through other people anymore, right? But what are the people around us thirsty for? What are we thirsty for? What are you thirsty for? Aren't you thirsty for a community that forgives, accepts, cares, encourages, submits, and restores and carries? I am. Aren't you? Just nod your head thinking like, yeah, all right, like give me something. Like, yes, right? Doesn't this sound beautiful? Doesn't this sound wonderful? It's what Jesus is trying to do. Trust is in the doing. So as we look at this picture, let me just have this question that kind of challenges us. Is there anyone outside of your family encouraging you to live out your faith? I say family because that's kind of the default, right? Because grandma just is like, you should go to church, or whatever your grandma sounds like. Or your cousin or your brother is like, you should, It's just kind of mandatory. You have to like smile and pretend like you're listening or whatever, right? But is there anyone outside of your family that's encouraging you to live out your faith, that's coming alongside of you and go, I know it looks nervous, but just like grab the railing and like go for it. Like trust God regardless. Like, live on that nervous edge of like, it's going to take more than I got and I don't think I have the ability or the capability, but with God all things are possible. I'm just going to venture out. And again, I'm not talking about online preachers or books you read. Like those are helpful. I do that. That's wonderful. But who's looking you in the eyeball? And who are you looking back in the eyeball to encourage to live out your faith? Because here's the trap. Here's the risk we run if we're not doing this well and intentionally. If you isolate yourself from other followers of Jesus, you will eventually feel isolated from the Father. And we don't even know this when we're making those decisions to pull back and separate, not be involved. Like, we don't even really think about this, but that's the risk we run, because what Jesus is doing is with people and for people. And if you begin to start separating and create isolation and distance because you've been hurt, and I'm going to go with me and God and not with the other people, and I'm just going to continue to pull back, like, eventually you're going to wander away and go, I don't even know really what happened. This happened. Some of you have wandered and you're not even sure. Like, this is probably what happened, is you pulled back from other people because of hurt and pain and just the misrepresentation of who God is and what should happen. And everybody's had the same experience. I mean, we could all share stories. And the same with the disciples too. They had the same experience. And we're going to fast forward, because we have this beauty of perspective of time here. We're going to fast forward like 3 years in their life from that first moment as businessmen of fish and of fishing. And then we're going to fast forward as they walked, they left everything, they followed God, and that's recorded for us in the Gospels, the story of Jesus. And they followed him, and they saw him do miraculous things. Like, the fish was the warm-up. Like, they saw like people rise from the dead. They saw limbs grow. They saw provision in crazy ways. They heard Jesus teach with authority. He said, here's what you know as a religion growing up as a Jewish people, but man, it's bigger than that. You don't quite understand. I'm doing a new thing. And they just were just amazed by his authority and his power and what he demonstrated. And they walked with him, and they got sent out by him, and they like touched people, and they like were healed. And they're like, this is amazing. And again, just in awe with each other, for people, as the message of the kingdom of God got out. And we fast forward, and we all know the story. It's the Easter story where Jesus he submits himself to what God has for him, as God himself, as the Father's plan is unfolding through the Son, as he submits himself to being arrested and charged unjustly and then hung on a cross for our sins and then rose again. Right? The disciples and people close to him began to separate, began to pull back from each other and from Jesus, particularly Simon Peter. He's like, I don't know Jesus. I'm not with him. As things got tough and tense, he's starting to pull back and separate, right, from God's plan. And then Jesus appeared to him after he rose from the dead, a couple times. And then again, it didn't change everything like they thought it would. Like, they were a little bit disillusioned how life was working out. They had invested 3 years with this guy, and they thought everything was going to change. They thought the political climate would change, that they would come out from underneath the Roman Empire and the structure there. They thought things were going to change, like religiously and in the community drastically. And then Jesus died and rose again, and then it's great, and then it has some belief. But then they're just like, it's still Tuesday. Like, we're just here, and it didn't totally change. I mean, it's going to change, and things began to progress from there. But at this moment, they didn't really change. And so they're hanging out, and they're like, I don't know, it's Tuesday. And so here the disciples again are gathered together, and we got a list of them. There's John 21, if you want to flip there real quick. Several of the disciples, Simon Peter, Thomas, twin, Nathaniel, sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, and then 2 other dudes are hanging out. And then Simon's like, I don't know, it's Tuesday. What are we doing Tuesday? Let's go fishing. Like, I'm going fishing. Some guys just like, this is my favorite Bible verse ever. Like, babe, I just want to be like Jesus, so I'm going fishing today. Like, that's what God said. Like, but they're just like, it's just another day. It didn't change everything drastically. And then everybody's like, all right, let's go fishing. We'll come too. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. All night. At dawn, Jesus is standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. I don't know if it's distance, fog, or whatever, or just supernatural thing. He called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? No, it's real slow. Right? We have this perspective. So again, we just heard this 10 minutes ago. They've lived an incredibly different life, for 3 years, and they've been in plenty of boats, and I'm sure they fish, and just time and time again, like this is, then he said, throw out your nets on the right side of the boat, and you'll get some. And so they did. They threw their nets out. They literally followed in faith and did something, trusting in the doing. And they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Like, what caused them, after hearing this guy on the beach, to throw out their net on the right-hand side of the boat? Like, what is that was speaking to him? It was the supernatural presence of God. It was a familiar voice. It was just, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, the disciple who Jesus loved, which is John, who's recording this is his phrase for himself. Let's pause right there. You too are loved by God. So you can adapt that title if you want to. You put that on your business card or on your door. It says supervisor. You can just scratch in like disciple who Jesus loved. Like that's who you are. Like you should know that. So John says to Peter, it's the Lord. And when Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, his outer jacket he'd taken off for work, and he jumped into the water and he headed to shore. Do you remember Peter's response from the first time? Nod your head like you remembered me 10 minutes ago. Just help me out here. You remember that? Like there's so much provision for his work, and he was just like in awe. He fell down on his knees and like, God, too much. There's another net full of fish. 3 years after being with Jesus, 4 other people, look at his response. He says, skip the fish. Fish was the warm-up. And he jumped in with fully clothed to go to shore to be with Jesus. He's no longer impressed by God's provision in the fish. He just wanted to be with Jesus. I hope you can get there or be there today in this moment or this week where you just like get more and more and just in awe of Jesus and who he is in your life and just want to be with him. Fish is just a warm-up. And so they get to shore. They're like hauling this net in of fish and everybody's working hard. So they get to shore. And Jesus says, come have some breakfast. Nobody asked, who's that dude? Like they had this light bulb moment, like ding, 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 like remember before in the fish? Oh yeah, just this amazing moment. Obviously they knew, and they knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them bread and the fish. Jesus on the beach with his buddies, providing for him again, making breakfast for him and hanging out. Like they're having church. Like that hopefully disrupts your idea of what it means to follow Jesus. Like this is as spiritual as this gathering here. Some of you are like, sweet, I'm going camping. Like I'm out, I'm going to the beach. But this is what it is. With Jesus, for other people, with other people. Like hanging out. And Jesus serving them. The risen Lord serving them with the bread and the fish, the provision he just did. And so they finish up breakfast and they go for a long walk on the beach together. Peter and Jesus. John tags behind, is kind of listening in, eavesdropping, kind of like a little brother would, I think. And he's recording this for us. And then Jesus just talks to Peter about the isolation that just happened. Some of that separation. When time got tough for Peter, when the difficult things showed up in life, as Jesus is getting arrested and people are going, you're with him, and he didn't want to be associated with Jesus because he didn't want to go to jail or have the punishment, he began to separate. He began to pull back. He began to pull back from some of the other followers and from Jesus, and he began to say, no. So Jesus kind of comes back and says, hey, are you going to trust in the doing? Are you going to follow me? Do you love me? Is his question. And Jesus goes, this tough question, and Jesus just kind of hangs it out there, and Peter's like, kind of hurt, like, but yeah, for sure, of course, like, yes. And he goes, well, then be with people. Spread my message. Love them well. And he asks it a second and a third time, and Peter's just like, I'm hurt, because that's what Peter had been asked, and it's a restoration of that process. And he ends this time with like, trust in the doing. Then you follow me. You follow me. Don't pull back, especially when times get tough. Like it's counterintuitive, the thing. When I'm in the darkest points and I'm in the toughest times, like I just kind of want to sink in and just me and God, but like God's built us for other people. And when we're in trouble, a lot of times he just sends us a friend. Because it's God's spirit inside of people going into the world and being with people. It's Jesus with us. It's just this beautiful thing. Jesus' community is with people, for people. Especially when times get tough. Especially when we really need each other. And we want to pull back, but I just encourage you, Jesus has built you for relationship with other people and to have trusted voices around you. People that will do that trust thing, and as best as we can with the power of the Holy Spirit at work, giving us the desire and the ability to go and forgive one another, care for one another, encourage one another, carry one another's burdens. Like that's just the beautiful thing that God's created us for. And to live that out. And it's far greater than sitting in rows on a Sunday morning. And as we wrap this up here this morning, I just want to lean in on this and give us all a real strong action point. The writer of Hebrews says it this way, Hebrews 10, And this might be a familiar for you, but hopefully some new context. Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm. The hope we have in Jesus, who he is and what he can do for us. He saved us and forgave us and has got a great life for us. For God can be trusted to keep his promise. You might still be stuck on needing God to provide for your work. The first part of the story, as Peter was like and amazed that God provided for his work so much. Let me just tell you, God can be trusted to keep his promise. You trust and follow Jesus, and he'll provide for all of your needs, everything you need for living life. Guaranteed. Our God can be trusted to keep his promise. And let us think of ways to motivate one another. Like, let's get real creative in how we go about this and what we do, and let's just be fun, have fun with it. Let's think of ways to motivate one another. That list of caring, encouraging, and forgiving, and just doing all that stuff to be with each other and to love one another well. Acts of love and good works. Let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return, of Jesus' return, is drawing near. And you may have been around church or heard this before, as like someone preaching this to say, let's not quit, let's not make sure we don't quit meeting on Sunday morning. Like, it's far more than Sunday morning. It's far greater than sitting in rows and hanging out. And this is good and wonderful, but there's so much more to the Christian experience. If your Christian experience in following Jesus or getting connected to God has just been, come on a Sunday once in a while, hear a few songs, somebody talks about money, and then somebody gets up and talks, and then you're like, I didn't really like that first song, and it was okay on the second, I didn't really follow the third. And just like we have a commentary, and you're like, the guy told a funny story, but then, and that's it. Uh-oh, there we go. Is that your whole Christian experience? Like, you're missing out. Like, you're missing out on tons. So let's encourage one another. And one of the ways we do that best here is through our small group environment. This is really what I just want to talk for a couple minutes, just real practically. And I don't want to leverage that verse to say, well, small groups is the thing. I'm not trying to replace like that verse with like, well, Sunday morning's the thing, now small groups. I'm just saying that's where we work around here to help us do the one another thing. To create an environment on our schedule with intentionality that we're connected with and involved with. That's just part of how we're doing it. Does a Sunday in a small group, the totality of my walk with Jesus and my community with other people? Absolutely not. Is it like everything I need for life and will fulfill me and fill my cup up every single week? Absolutely not. But is it a part of it? You betcha. Is it valuable? You betcha. Freedom Ministries is coming up, it's starting up. It's one of those environments where you can have conversations that are honest and authentic about going through a loss of a loved one, about going through a divorce, about some sort of addiction or some part of you that's just not feeling whole. You'll find a group of people that love you and care about you and as the best they can do the one another and allow God to do their work inside of you. And you can have an honest conversation around that topic. Community groups are designed to have community in our community, meet in people's homes throughout the week, and designed to help us get really connected, know one another, to circle up and to see eyeball to eyeball the people and to share life. I just remember a couple years ago, there was a couple part of our community group for Amy and I, and they were coming, a younger couple at a second marriage and a blended family, and they're there, and they're just trying to figure out life and purpose and lots of different ways. And I just remember showing up, and they were literally on the edge of divorce. Like, they were vocalizing that, like they were starting to separate. They were starting to go apart, and they had 2 little babies, and just God was at work in them. He was the one changing their heart. He was the one leading them. Their decision to look to each other and to recommit to one another and the hard work that they put in. But the people in the small group were a small part of that. And as they showed up over the next few weeks, just seeing them reconcile and literally say out loud, like, we've decided to stay together. And now they've got a couple more beautiful babies together, and they're following God's plan and purpose in their life. And I just think, man, where would God be at work without a little bit of influence from us in our community group? Or 7 years ago, this is just a little quick story. 7 years ago, there was a lady I met in the lobby who was looking to get connected, wasn't really connected around here at all, had been on a couple Sunday mornings. I said, you can come check out our community group. She came, her name's Pam. She came and she started to share life with us, and she's become a friend. We watched her apply for medical school and has gone through medical school. She's become our triathlon coach over the last few years, and we've connected that way. She lost her father a few years ago. That was unexpected, and so walking through that grieving process process with her and being with her. We've walked through medical stuff with our oldest kid with epilepsy and her helping us from a doctor point of view of how to handle that and being a friend. She met a guy, which is fun. And then this last June, I performed the wedding and Amy was a wedding coordinator. And we just would have missed out on those experiences, so many other things, if we just said, I'm too busy. Because I know as I start talking about like circling up with people and being involved in each other's life, you're like, whoo, I got Netflix to watch, dude. You know, like, because I know we're all too busy. But if you take up the time, you've been too busy for the last 6 months, like, what do you have to show for it? Right? Like, what about the beautiful thing of being in community with one another? Grow groups, like these specific groups that help us design around a certain topic, like Financial Peace University is one of those. And just this week, there was somebody kind of connected to our community, but really on the outside, called in looking for some financial help. Got them connected this week to some people who've gone through Financial Peace and just want to walk with her as a single mom through some budgeting and financial stuff to love our community, be with them. Like there's some grow groups coming up. Like we need to work on our parenting group. Starting point is this new environment. If you're new to church or new to Jesus, exploring what it means in your faith, and we're wanting to get that going. We've got something planned for the beginning of the year that's not on here. That is another level of helping us grow as a church, and in this new season, creating some depth as our foundation that we can trust Jesus more, and so we can do more because we're gonna have greater trust in the doing, and just living our lives well to be in awe of Jesus and to reach our community. And we're always on the lookout for what God has for us as a church and as a community, that we could trust in Him and follow Him. So, who are you living out your faith with? Who are you to eyeball with? Who is encouraging you, and who are you encouraging? And it's time for some of you that have been around and been part of stuff to help out, to use your gifts, to live on that nervous edge of like, I don't even know, I can't. Right, perfect, yes, that's when we all jump in, right? You know, help out, lead a group, serve, host. Lead. You've been a part of a freedom group before. Like, it's your time to be an apprentice leader, invest in others, to be eyeball to eyeball, to encourage, to carry another burden in a different way. Like, it's your time. It's not time to wait. It's time to jump in and be part of what God is doing, because trust is in the doing, and that's how we experience the full life that Jesus has for each and every one of us. So let's pray as we close today. Heavenly Father, we're grateful that you love us so much and you care about us.